Hello, and welcome to this episode of When Skills Matter. As AI transforms jobs, workflows, and the workplace itself, what human skills become more valuable and not less? And how should HR and L&D leaders respond? This episode explores the essential skills needed in a post-AI world, how organizations can start building them, and how to use AI to support, not sideline, human development. My guest today is Paul Morgan, who's an old friend who we've known for a long time. And just to give you a bit of background on him, he's spent the last 30 years in learning and development, has worked for senior leadership roles in companies such as Microsoft, O2, SIG PLC, Diageo, Fort Housing, and ERM, leading teams and complex projects. Paul's now working across a number of areas, including capability reviews and compliance, capability consulting, system and tool reviews, coaching, facilitation, and advisory. I would also like to mention he's now started an L&D and HR clinic, which is his latest activity, but his main activity is in consulting for organizations and sharing his skills. So without more ado, welcome, Paul, to When Skills Matter. It's great to have you here.
Robin, nice to see you.
Today we're going to be talking about something everyday HR and L&D professionals will recognize, the skills that matter for HR in the attention economy. No one seems to have the time. Hiring feels harder than ever, yet productivity expectations keep rising. HR and L&D leaders face two compounding challenges. Everyone is short of time, and the talent market feels tighter than ever. In an attention economy where focus is fragmented and the pace of change is relentless, how can organizations boost productivity, close skills gaps, and hire effectively? This episode digs into the reality behind no one has the time and explores whether employment is still as healthy as it looks and offers strategies for building skills without adding to overload. Our guest Paul Morgan is here to help us unpack what's really going on and how to navigate it. So, Paul, let's get started. It feels like no one has time anymore. Do you see this as a perception, reality, or both?
My experience is a reality. The more and more people that I've spoken to and worked with over the last number of years never have time to do a lot of things. But I truly believe that it's a choice, number one. And number two, the reason why they don't have time is because they choose to do other things or they're unproductive in the way that they work, which gives them and takes away the time that they have.
So how does this lack of time affect learning and capability and skill building, do you think?
In my experience, you find a lot of people that say they don't have enough time to spend it on themselves. And what I say to a lot of people is, imagine how you start the day, imagine how you set up the day, imagine how you prepare for the day. And a lot of people don't do that. They just jump into the day and jump from one meeting to another, which actually, by itself can be unproductive. And I also think a number of people choose, not deliberately, but they choose to do things that are unproductive. How many times do they go for a cigarette break? How many times do they speak to Joe in accounts when it's not really a conversation? How many discussions they have in the corridor? If they could reduce the amount of time that they got to do things and they gave back some time to themselves, let's say 5 minutes, they could spend 5 minutes every day on their development. And although it's only 5 minutes, if you imagine 5 minutes for at least 3 days of the week, if you did that for the rest of the month, that is an awful lot of learning. That could be, I read the latest articles, I look at some research, I see some LinkedIn posts, I learn from other people. But actually, people don't have the time, because in the majority of cases, they're unproductive or choosing to do things that aren't as productive as they could be.
Time management for a start.
Yes. An interesting view that I always ask people is, how many pads do you have? How many notepads do you have? Do you have one for this and one for that and one for the other? It's bad enough having one notepad because it doesn't have a search bar, but how many times do you have people that have three and then you have a meeting with them and the meeting starts with, what did we discuss last time? Or, oh, I did write that down, and actually they spend 3 minutes trying to find the thing that you discussed with them last time. Well, actually, if they were a bit more organized and put it in a particular place, they could find all of their actions, then they wouldn't be able to actually waste that time. They could use that time effectively. And even doing that, 10 times in a day, that can actually eat away at the time you have to actually spend time on yourself developing, or even doing things like going for a walk or having lunch or having a good time to actually think about the day and actually prepare yourself for either the morning or the afternoon or even the week ahead.
So many things to worry about and so many things to focus on. Speaking about focus, when it's split between competing priorities, how can HR and L&D even get a foot in the door and make sure that they're offering an effective training?
Learning and development, in my opinion, is a choice. In some cases, it's mandated. But even when it's mandated, people choose to do it at the very last time because they don't see it as a priority. I think, HR and L&D teams really need to find out what people really need and actually what people really want, and in terms of where some of the skills gaps are within their organization. And everyone talks a lot about skills. Everyone talks about wanting to have a skills workforce. Everyone wants to understand more about skills. But people, in my opinion, are spending more time talking about some of the elements about what is a skill, who owns skills, how do we get it done, without doing some very pragmatic work, just to ask some very simple questions to get some very immediate responses and actually some targeted training that people do want versus things that people think they want, but they don't. A very simple philosophy is if you meet with your team and you meet with your team members every month and you ask them, how are you coping? What are you struggling with? There's usually something that they'll find difficult. If you're able to specifically target some training or some support or mentoring around that particular skills and people could see an immediate benefit from it, I think they would feel a lot more positive about the word learning and development and the intersection and how they use HR and L&D effectively.
It's interesting because as an employee, you want to secure your job in a time when a lot of jobs are becoming redundant, often due to AI. So you want to make sure that you're in demand, your skills are up to the mark. And from an organization's point of view, are they going to upskill people or hire new people? Is that going to be a terrible waste of money? How do you see the discussion about skills shortages? Do you think there is a skills shortage? And do you think people should be hiring outside or upskilling from internally?
Skills shortages have been around for many, many years. And before, there were ways in which those skills shortages could be understood. I think because of the complexity of the working world and my organization, those skills shortages are felt, not understood. And people feel that they haven't got some skills versus others, but they don't have the tools in which to easily capture and easily understand some of the skills they have in the organization. So some organizations like to hire within and give people opportunities. Some people don't have time and they don't have the ability internally to give those people the time because of their utilization. They hire externally. I think there are positives to hiring internally and moving people around, and there are positives to hiring externally. It depends on the situation, but bringing in external people gives you an external perspective, maybe that you didn't have before, and a set of new skills that other people can learn from. But it is situation by situation. What I'm seeing in the marketplace is there is more appetite to try and train internally. One of the difficulties is how long is it going to take and actually what skills are actually required. So I think that is the hard thing to work out. What is required and what is the gap and how do I fill it? And I think a lot of people are worrying about this in terms of what systems and tools they use, how they assess people's skills, how they fill the gap, what is the gap, how long and how much it going to cost versus actually bringing someone in new. From what I can see from the market and in terms of what people want, people are being very specific on the skills. If someone leaves, on very specific on the skills that that person had, not necessarily what different skills that person can bring and what different skills that person could learn. And obviously, there is pressure to replace what you've already known. It actually brings results, but I think there needs to be more understanding, both internally and externally, in terms of the capability of people and actually what the gap is. But in order to do that, you need to do it from an objective point of view and find the right tool and the right systems to work out whether the gap is big, small, or there isn't a gap at all, and actually be able to move your people around and actually have more mobility. I think 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot more mobility in companies where people were given opportunities based on what they'd done in the past to move. I think that is becoming less and less because people are sure what they've got. And with the inception of AI, there's a lot of pressure in terms of what AI will or won't do, and actually what skills people will or won't want. However, coming back to your earlier point, we as individuals need to keep on with our own skills, and we need to adapt and actually grow. And if we don't do that, then eventually AI will take an element of our job because it will be redundant. But this is no different from when cars were made by people, right? And they've now been replaced by automation. If people know that that's going to happen, then obviously there's an element of reskilling for themselves. There's also an element of what the organization can do for them. So in simple terms, I think a mix is always good, but it's understanding what the gap is and understanding really what the requirement is. Because I did a talk about 2 years ago about skills. The interesting thing you still find today, if you go to any job specification, skills are never mentioned. It's interesting that when you go and actually look at a job, it says the requirements that you need, the experience that you need, but it doesn't actually hone down the specific skills you need and the competence you need to do them. In order for us to become more specific, I think we need to change the whole process, that from hiring all the way through to onboarding, all the way through to growing, etc. We need to be a lot more specific in the jobs that people need, make it easier for systems and tools to align the right training and education and actually know whether there's a gap or not.
Do you think that AI is going to help with this? I mean, certainly it's changing the way people go about their jobs and job descriptions.
Yes, I mean, AI put in the right hands can help a lot of things. AI is what I would say, you're making a cake. AI is an ingredient of the cake to enhance the way that the cake looks or feels. It's not the cake. So AI is going to help us to get more precise outcomes, but AI can't make decisions, right? People still have to make the decisions. So I think AI will help us to get to the decisions quicker, but it still needs people with the right skills to make sure that they're using AI responsibly and in the right way to give us the outcomes we need. But you still got to know as an individual, okay, I've got all this data. What am I going to do with it? What is important? How am I going to invest, etc.? So I think AI is an enabler. AI is not a thing that I feel will replace people. It will replace processes to give us outcomes, the same way that automation of building cars, that's helped. But obviously there are still things that humans need to do at the end of it with regard to quality checking or the other bits and pieces. It will help us be more productive and more efficient.
We see these scary statistics about organizations letting go of hundreds, if not thousands of workers. And inevitably, you think back to, is this because of AI? So I think jobs are being lost because of AI, because there's a terrible uncertainty in the marketplace and people haven't really got the whole picture straight in their minds. If you were to give HR and L&D leaders a one tip as to what to do to help with this attention economy, what would it be?
Two things. I think educating people on how they're more productive and how they organize themselves and to give them tips and tricks around helping them with that is number one. And enabling them to sample and try. We don't sample and try enough anymore. We think that we're going to buy a tool, we're going to focus it, and we're going to roll it out. I think HR and L&D need the ability to go and buy or test a few items, take 50 people in a particular area, right? Work out what the skill gap is, work with a company like SkillsAssess as an example, and say, this is what we think the particular issue is. Let's actually go through the scenario and let's test the people to work out whether we've got the gap where we think we've got the gap. And let's see in terms of whether we can fill the gap, and let's see whether we close the gap after filling the gap. And I think we're in discussion, and we're all in discussion without any practical application. I know a few organizations, very big enterprise organizations, are doing it, but you've lost the ability for HR and L&D to have the enablement to go, let's just work on a particular area and let's work on a particular hypothesis, right? That discussion is fraught with danger because of politics, who owns skills, who owns the process, how does it work? I think we've lost the ability to be flexible, to go and try something and see whether it works. Bureaucracy is taken over in terms of who does it. But I think, many years ago, 3 people were given a task and they go and do it and they would come back with certain elements. I think we seem to have lost that. I think the elasticity in companies and the ability to people to try and fail has also been lost because people are scared. So I think two things. We need to enable our people to understand how it is to be more productive. Am I being productive? Am I utilizing, the best of my day? Could I get 5 minutes back? And if I can, how shall I use it? And secondly, just allow people to go and try and test. And it doesn't need loads of sign off. It doesn't need board sign off. Just give them the empowerment to go and try and do the jobs that they're employed to do and get some of the outcomes that you want them to get.
Fair enough. Well, so tell me, with your new L&D doctor clinic, do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so as I've been in L&D for some time, I was very lucky to work for a number of organizations where no question was a bad question and I didn't know everything. Even when I was in senior leadership posts, I would be able to ask people internally or externally. I feel we've lost the art and the ability to feel as though we don't know everything. And I wanted to create the L&D doctor clinic to allow any L&D or HR professional come to it and ask me a question with regard to my experience. I'm thinking of doing this. What should I do? I've got this problem. Can you give me some advice? Have you ever thought about this? So it allows a private space with up to 10 people to come and just ask questions over an hour every 2 weeks. And then for that person not to be judged, it could be, I feel that I don't have this skill. How do you think I should get this skill? I'm having issues with X. And I feel that it's hard to raise the skills that you don't have versus the skills you do, and to be vulnerable and say you don't know what you're doing because you have to pretend to know what you're doing. Otherwise, people don't see. So it was my way of giving back, that anyone within the profession can come, over an hour and just ask me a number of questions. The first one I did was dominated by a supplier who didn't really understand the world of L&D and came in to understand what the day in the life of a head of L&D is and what you worry about. And I gave them some tips and tricks about what they may want to think about, how businesses are changing and how that opens up opportunities for them. And they were working in the leadership space, and I was describing, HR and L&D terminology of spans and layers. I think it was either Sainsbury's or Morrison that have taken out the store manager and basically put the responsibility down into sectional managers. And clearly that's going to leave a gap. There's a productivity and efficiency saving, but there's going to be a capability gap that someone's going to have to help to fill that organization.
At SkillsAssess, what we do is we assess skills gaps, and the AI-powered system then recommends personalized learning pathways and helps to quickly identify and address those skills gaps. Do you think tools like SkillsAssess are going to be useful in the L&D and HR world?
I think they're going to be vital. The vital thing about them is they need to be relevant to the organization that you're giving them to. So they can pump into their own content, they can pump into their own frameworks, they can pump into particular scenarios or certain skills by role. I think one of the issues with systems and tools nowadays is it's not built with flexibility in mind, it's built with a particular process in mind. So I think, back to what I said, if SkillsAssess allows, an organization to try a particular area, a particular function, a particular skill with a group of people and understand what the gap is and then able to close the gap and then work out what the gap is after, that's what I think people need. The big problem at the moment is you've got big HR systems like Workday, you've got big learning management systems like Cornerstone, and everyone's trying to work out how do we do it at scale. I don't think that's the answer we should be getting to yet. It's a case of what can we do in the meantime to work out what the gap is and actually work out what can close the gap and how important that is to the company in terms of workforce development, in terms of productivity and efficiency and obviously profit, versus spending a lot of money talking about some of the things that they're trying to solve where they need something a lot smaller to solve. So if SkillsAssess is flexible enough that you can mold it to your models, you can mold it to your job specs, you can mold it to the content or the system you're using, then I think it will be very, very useful.
Flexibility is key.
It is. You spend more time working out what a system can't do and won't do versus what it can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Been very interesting talking about this topic today, how the attention economy is putting us under pressure, how AI could be also a new challenge, and how L&D and HR leaders need to respond. So thank you very much indeed for your time. To our listeners, if you're trying to pinpoint the skills that make the biggest productivity impact on your teams, please take a look at what we do at skillsassess.ai/podcast. along with our resources and notes. So many thanks. And
Thank you, Robin. Lovely to see you again.
And I'm sure that we'll be working together in the future.
No doubt.
Okay, all the best.
Thank you very much.